Silver can't be worth that much. I know that sounds strange coming from a physicist. You are looking at silver prices. Maybe you own some silver coins, some jewelry, and you are thinking, well, of course it has value. People have valued silver for thousands of years. It is a precious metal. It is used in industry, in electronics, in solar panels. How can you possibly say it can't be worth that much? But hear me out. After decades of studying physics, thermodynamics, information theory, and yes, even dabbling in economics and monetary theory, I've come to realize that silver's value, in the way we intuitively think about it, is not a fundamental feature of reality. It is a collective fiction, an emergent phenomenon, a way human societies organize exchange and store information about labor and resources at the deepest level. From a physics perspective, silver is just atoms, and those atoms can't inherently be worth anything. Worth is something we assign. Let me take you on a journey through physics and economics, and I'll show you why silver's value is an illusion and what really determines price in a physical universe. When I was young, before I really understood thermodynamics and statistical mechanics, I thought value was obvious. Gold is valuable. Silver is valuable. They're rare, they're useful, they're beautiful. That is why they cost what they cost. These are physical properties leading to economic value, simple cause and effect. This is how markets work, right? Supply and demand acting on physical objects with inherent properties. But physics tells a different story. Let's start with the most basic question. What is value? What does it mean for silver to be worth something? Intuitively, it means you can exchange it for other things. It means people want it. It means it has purchasing power. But where does that come from? Is it in the silver atoms themselves? Is there some physical property, some quantum mechanical feature that makes silver valuable? Think about what silver actually is. It is element 47. It has 47 protons in its nucleus. It has particular electron configurations that give it certain properties. It is shiny. It is a good conductor. It is resistant to corrosion. These are physical facts. But none of these facts contain value. Conductivity is measured in Siemens per m-meter. Reflectivity is a dimensionless ratio. These are physical quantities. They have nothing to do with dollars or purchasing power or worth. Value is not a physical property. You can't measure it with instruments. There is no value field that silver creates. There is no quantum state of being valuable. Value is not in the physics. It is somewhere else entirely. So where is it? Economics says value comes from supply and demand. Silver is scarce. People want it. Therefore, it has value. But let me tell you something interesting from a physics perspective. Scarcity is relative, not absolute. Silver seems scarce to us because we're humans on Earth looking at easily accessible deposits. But the universe is full of silver. Every star above a certain mass produces silver through nuclear fusion and supernova processes. There are roughly 10 to the power of 56 silver atoms in the observable universe. That is a 1 followed by 56 zeros. Silver is not fundamentally scarce. It is only scarce relative to human demand on Earth in the 21st century. And here is the thing, that scarcity, that ratio of supply to demand, it changes. New deposits get discovered. Mining technology improves. Asteroid mining might become feasible. Suddenly, silver is not scarce anymore. Or demand shifts. We invent better conductors. We find substitutes. We change our technology. Demand drops. The scarcity ratio changes. And with it, the value changes, but the silver atoms haven't changed. The physics hasn't changed. An atom of silver is the same whether it is worth $20 an ounce or 2 cents an ounce. The value is not in the physics. It is in the relationship between human desires and available quantity. It is emergent from human behavior, not fundamental to the material. Let me go deeper. Think about energy. In physics, we can measure the energy required to extract silver from ore. You have to dig it up, crush the rock, use chemical processes to separate the silver, refine it, transport it. All of this requires energy. and energy has a physical reality: joules, calories, kilowatt, Hors. These are real physical quantities. Some economists, going back to the classical labor theory of value, thought maybe value is embodied energy or embodied labor. The value of silver is the energy and work required to produce it. But this doesn't hold up either. If I spend enormous energy producing something nobody wants, it has no value. I can expend gigajoules of energy making sand sculptures in my backyard. That doesn't make them valuable. Conversely, if I find a gold nugget lying on the ground, it has enormous value despite requiring almost no energy to obtain. Value is not proportional to energy input. The physics of energy expenditure doesn't determine economic value. There's another angle here: thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics says entropy always increases in a closed system. Entropy is disorder, the spread of energy into less useful forms. When you mine silver, when you refine it, when you manufacture things from it, you are creating local order, decreasing entropy locally, but at the cost of increasing entropy elsewhere. You are burning fuel, generating heat, dispersing energy. The total entropy of the universe increases. Now, you might think valuable things are low, entropy things. Silver is ordered, refined, pure. That is why it is valuable. But again, this doesn't work. Diamonds are extremely low entropy, highly ordered crystal structures. Yet synthetic diamonds can be made cheaply. They have the same physical structure, the same low entropy, but they're worth far less than natural diamonds. Why? Because of human perception, because of stories we tell about rarity and authenticity, not because of physics. Entropy doesn't determine value. Value is not a thermodynamic quantity. Let me tell you about something that really crystallized this for me. Information theory. Claude Shannon, in the 1940s, developed a mathematical theory of information. Information is measured in bits. It is about uncertainty, about how many yes or no questions you need to ask to specify a state. Now, you might think the value of silver is related to information. Maybe the information content of its atomic structure, or the information needed to locate and extract deposits. But information in Shannon's sense is not the same as economic value. Random noise has high information content because it is unpredictable, but it is worthless. Conversely, a simple repeated pattern has low information content but might be valuable if people want it. Economic value and information content are not the same thing. There is something deeper, though. Money, and by extension precious metals used as money, is a form of information storage. When you hold silver, you are holding information about past labor, past exchanges, past production. Silver coins are tokens representing stored economic information. But the information is not in the atoms. It is in the social agreement that these atoms represent value. The physics is just a substrate, a physical medium for storing social information. Think about it this way. If society collapses, if everyone forgets that silver is supposed to be valuable, the silver atoms are still there. The physics hasn't changed, but the value evaporates because the value was never in the physics. It was in the collective belief, the social convention, the information stored in millions of human minds about what silver means. Value is not physical. It is informational, social, emergent from human behavior. Let me connect this to quantum mechanics. I know this seems like a stretch, but bear with me. In quantum field theory, particles are excitations of fields. An electron is an excitation of the electron field. A silver atom is a particular configuration of quark fields and electron fields organized into protons, neutrons, and electrons. But there is no value field being excited. Value is not a quantum property. You can write down the complete quantum state of a silver atom, specifying every quantum number, every field configuration, and nowhere in that description is there anything about value. Value is not in the wave function. It is not in the Hilbert space. It is not in the quantum field configuration. It is completely absent from the fundamental physics. This might seem obvious, but it has profound implications. It means value is not a property of matter. It is a property of relationships between conscious agents and matter. Value exists in minds, in social structures, in information patterns, not in physical stuff. Now let me tell you about something from economics that connects to this. The subjective theory of value, this idea developed in the late 1800s by economists like Carl Menger and others, says value is not intrinsic to objects. It is subjective based on individual preferences and marginal utility. The same object has different value to different people in different circumstances. A glass of water in the desert is worth more than a glass of water by a river. The water molecules are the same, the physics is the same. But the value is different because of context, because of scarcity relative to need, because of subjective utility. Silver is the same way. Its value is not in the silver. It is in what silver means to people, what they can do with it, how much they want it relative to other things. And this varies by person, by time, by circumstance. From a physics perspective, this is fascinating. Value is context-dependent, observer-dependent, emergent from relationships, not intrinsic to objects. Just like quantum properties that only manifest upon measurement, value only manifests in the context of exchange, of human desire, of social agreement. Let me tell you about another aspect. Fiat currency, modern money, is not backed by silver or gold. It is backed by trust in governments, by legal tender laws, by social convention. A dollar bill is a piece of paper. The physics is trivial. Cotton and linen fibers, some ink, nothing special. But it has value because we agree it has value, because the government accepts it for taxes, because everyone else accepts it for goods. The value of fiat money is pure social construction. There is literally nothing physical about it that determines value, and yet it works. The economy runs on it. This proves that value doesn't need to be tied to physical properties at all. Value is information, convention, trust now. Silver still has some intrinsic usefulness. It is used in electronics, in solar panels, in medical applications. This is real physical utility based on its conductivity, its antibacterial properties, its reflectivity. But even this usefulness doesn't directly determine value. The value depends on how much people are willing to pay for those applications, which depends on the availability of substitutes, the cost of alternatives, the demand for end products. The physical properties are necessary but not sufficient for value. They enable certain uses, but the value comes from the economic context, not from the physics. Let me give you another angle: relativity. Not Einstein's relativity, but the relativity of value. In special relativity, simultaneity is relative to reference frames. There is no absolute now. Different observers disagree about what events are simultaneous. Similarly, in economics, value is relative to reference frames of desire, scarcity, and context. There is no absolute value. Different economic observers in different situations assign different values to the same physical object. A silver coin might be worth a lot to a collector, less to an industrial user. Nothing to someone who doesn't know what silver is. The physics is the same. The value is relative. In general relativity, space-time is curved, and there is no unique way to define global time or space. Similarly, in economics, there is no unique way to define absolute value across different markets, different times, different cultures. Value is curved by context, by supply and demand, by social forces. Objects don't have intrinsic value any more than they have intrinsic simultaneity. Both are frame-dependent, context-dependent, emergent properties. Let me tell you about something practical. The price of silver fluctuates wildly. In 1980, silver peaked at around $50 an ounce. By 2001, it was under $5. By 2011, it was back near $50. Now it is somewhere around $25 to $30. The silver atoms haven't changed, the physical properties haven't changed, but the value has varied by a factor of 10, while economic factors, speculation, industrial demand, monetary policy, market sentiment, geopolitical events. None of these are physical. They're all social, informational, psychological. The value of silver is determined by human behavior, not by physics. From a physics perspective, this is wild. Imagine if the mass of an electron fluctuated by a factor of 10 based on what people thought about it. Ridiculous, right? Physical properties are stable, objective, independent of opinion, but value is not a physical property. It is a social construct, and social constructs are fluid, subjective, context, dependent. Silver can't be worth that much because worth is not a property that physical objects can have. Worth is a relationship, an emergent phenomenon, a collective agreement. Now you might be thinking, okay, fine, value is not intrinsic to the physics, but it is still real. People still trade silver. It still has purchasing power. What is your point? My point is this: understanding that value is not physical, that it is emergent from social dynamics, helps us see through illusions about wealth and economics. People treat silver, gold, money as if they have intrinsic value, as if wealth is a physical substance you can accumulate, but wealth is not physical. It is informational, it is about relationships, about what you can exchange, about social agreements. A pile of silver is just atoms. The wealth is in the social context that allows you to exchange those atoms for other things. If that context disappears, the wealth disappears, even though the atoms remain. This has implications. It means wealth can be created or destroyed by changing social agreements, by changing information, without any physical change. A financial crisis destroys wealth without destroying any physical matter. The atoms are all still there. The buildings, the machines, the resources, but the informational structure, the credit, the trust, the agreements, those can collapse, and with them wealth evaporates. Similarly, wealth can be created by innovation, by new information, by better organization, without creating new physical stuff. A new technology makes existing resources more valuable. A new social organization, a new market structure, creates wealth from the same physical materials. Wealth is not conserved like energy. It is not a physical quantity. It is an emergent informational phenomenon. Let me connect this back to silver specifically. People buy silver as a store of value, as protection against inflation, as a hedge against economic collapse. The idea is that silver has intrinsic value that will persist even if paper money fails. But from a physics perspective, this is dubious. Silver has value only in a social context where people want it and agree to trade for it. In a true collapse scenario, food, water, tools, skills, those might be valuable because they have direct physical utility for survival. But silver, it is shiny metal. You can't eat it. It has some uses, but in a collapse, would people really trade food for silver? The value of silver as a monetary metal is entirely dependent on social convention, on the persistence of a market economy, on the continuation of certain cultural beliefs about precious metals. It is not intrinsic, it is contingent. Now, let me tell you about scarcity from a thermodynamic perspective. Creating order, concentrating resources requires energy. Mining silver requires digging through enormous amounts of rock to find small concentrations of silver ore. You are fighting entropy, creating local order. This costs energy. The energy cost of extraction sets a floor on the price. If silver costs more energy to mine than it is worth, people stop mining it. So there is a connection between physics and economics here. The thermodynamic cost of extraction constrains the economic value, but it doesn't determine it. The price can be much higher than the extraction cost if demand is high. Or technology can reduce extraction costs, changing the floor. Or new deposits can be found that are cheaper to exploit. The physics constrains but doesn't determine value. And here is something interesting. As we develop better technology, as we get better at extracting resources, the energy cost per unit goes down. Things become less scarce in an economic sense, even though the total physical quantity hasn't changed. The scarcity is not a fixed physical property. It is a function of technology, of how efficiently we can fight entropy. Scarcity is emergent from the interaction of physical resources and technological capability. It is not intrinsic to the material. Let me tell you about one more thing. The asteroid belt contains vast quantities of precious metals, including silver. Some asteroids are basically solid metal. The total value, if you calculated it at current market prices, would be astronomical, trillions and trillions of dollars. But here is the thing. If we actually mined those asteroids and brought all that silver to Earth, the price would collapse. The value would evaporate, not because the physics changed, but because scarcity disappeared. Supply overwhelmed demand, and with it, value vanished. This thought experiment shows that value is not in the stuff. It is in the ratio of stuff to desire. Change the ratio, and value changes. Even though the physical properties of silver remain constants, silver can't be worth that much because worth is not a property of silver. It is a property of the economic system, of supply and demand dynamics, of human psychology and social convention. Now, let me address what I think is the deepest issue. Money and value are forms of information about resource allocation. In a complex economy, prices carry information about scarcity, about demand, about where resources should flow. Silver's price is information. It tells miners whether to extract more. It tells industries whether to use silver or find substitutes. It tells consumers whether to buy or wait. But the information is not in the silver atoms. It is in the price, which is determined by market dynamics, by billions of human decisions, by expectations and speculation and sentiment. The silver is just a token, a physical substrate for carrying this informational signal. From an information theory perspective, the value of silver is the information it represents in the economic system, not any physical property of the atoms. And that information can change, can be created or destroyed independently of the physical silver. Value is informational, not physical. Let me bring this all together. Silver can't be worth that much because at every level, when you look closely, value dissolves. At the atomic level, silver is just element 47, nothing special. At the thermodynamic level, it is atoms with certain entropy, certain energy costs to extract. At the quantum level, it is field excitations with no property corresponding to value. At the economic level, its worth is determined by supply and demand, which are social phenomena, not physical ones. At the informational level, its value is a signal in a market system, not an intrinsic property. There is no worth in the physics. Worth is an emergent phenomenon arising from human desires, social conventions, market dynamics, technological capabilities. Silver atoms don't have value. Humans assign value to silver atoms based on context. Does this mean silver is worthless? Number, it means silver's worth is contingent, emergent, socially constructed. It has value in our current economic system because we agree. It does because markets function, because supply and demand create prices. But that value is not intrinsic, it is not guaranteed, it is not in the atoms. It is in the system, in the relationships, in the collective information stored in millions of human minds about what silver can be exchanged for. And I think understanding this is crucial. It means wealth is not about accumulating physical stuff. It is about participating in information networks, in social structures, in economic relationships. The stuff is secondary. The relationships are primary. Silver can't be worth that much, not because the price is wrong, but because worth that much is a category error. Physical objects don't have worth in the way we intuitively think. They have physical properties. Worth is something we layer on top, an emergent social construction. This is one of the great insights you get from thinking about economics through the lens of physics. We've discovered that the fundamental economic quantities are not physical. They're informational, relational, emergent, value, price, wealth. These are not properties of matter. They're properties of systems of interacting agents. Silver can't be worth that much, and recognizing this is essential for understanding the true nature of economics. It is counterintuitive. It challenges our everyday experience, but it is what you see when you look at economics with a physicist's eye. The market is not made of valuable objects. It is made of information flows, social agreements, emergent patterns that we interpret as value. But the value is the map, not the territory. The fundamental reality is atoms and energy and entropy. Value is an abstract layer we construct on top. That is what I've learned from thinking about these questions. Worth is an illusion, a useful, pragmatically indispensable illusion, but an illusion nonetheless. And seeing through the illusion, understanding what really determines prices and values beneath the appearance of intrinsic worth. That is what happens when you think like a physicist about economics.